I'm Eliza Hart, 27 years old, and previous week my existence flipped inverted during a household supper. My entire existence, I've been the unseen one, the one my guardians hardly observe beside my sibling. The brilliant broadcaster who could commit no error. They constantly commended her, lavished her with, all while I was simply present. But that evening, they forced me too much. It was Saturday, and we were assembled around the eating table, the customary strain bubbling. My mother grinned, her tone sugary sweet, and stated, "Darling, your sibling requires your chamber for her live broadcast studio. It's time to relinquish it." I stiffened, utensil in grass, my youth haven, my single secure area fading away. Before I could reply, my father banged his palm on the table, his visage crimson. "Consent or depart from this residence," he bellowed. The chamber became utterly quiet. My sibling grinned smugly, reclining back as if she'd already triumphed. My junior brother fidgeted uneasily, evading my gaze. I could have debated. I could have yelled back, enumerated every occasion they ignored me, every instant they selected her over me. But instead, I grinned, a gradual, intentional grin that caused my mother's eyes constrict and my father's mandible clench. They didn't know what was approaching. They believed they could bully me around like always. But I had something in reserve, something that would turn their existence inverted. And it was only a question of time before they discovered. If it were you in that circumstance, what would you do? Remain quiet, resist, or grin like I did? Remark your reply below. I desire to know which route you would select. Growing up in Springfield, I was always in my sibling's shade. Our household resided in a 2-level home in a middle-tier district, the sort of location where everyone knew each other's affairs. My sibling Serena was the star of the performance. She yearned attention, always posing for pictures, rehearsing her grins in the mirror and fantasizing of celebrity. My father, a store supervisor with a talent for spoiling her, and my mother, a bank worker who pampered her every caprice, ensured Serena got whatever she desired. New gowns for talent, competitions, dance classes, even a floodlight for her chamber shows. They'd applaud and encourage, their eyes twinkling as if she was already on a Hollywood platform. Meanwhile, my junior brother Marcus was the infant of the household. He'd waddle around, his arms loaded with fresh toys, remote-controlled vehicles, action models, you name it. Mother would gather him up, murmuring about how charming he was, while father sneaked him additional biscuits before supper. Marcus could commit no error, his every chuckle a gem. They'd display him around at household gatherings, exhibiting his appeal, while I sat silently disregarded. I was distinct. I adored volumes, thick ones, about arithmetic, finances, anything with figures that created logic. I'd spend hours in my chamber jotting formulas or studying about ventures, fantasizing of a realm where I could create my own impression. But to mother and father, my interests were useless. "Why can't you be more like your sibling?" mother would exhale, glancing at Serena's stack of contest awards. Father was harsher. "Those volumes won't get you anywhere." My chamber, with its shelves of worn manuals and a small table where I'd conceal my aspirations, was my refuge. It was the one spot I felt secure, where I could be myself without their criticism. But even that wasn't holy. When I was 13, I began laboring weekends at a local market, packing items for a few dollars an hour. I preserved every cent, hiding it in a metal container under my bed, hoping to purchase a computer to learn more about finances. By 15, I had nearly $500, diligently earned every penny mine. One day, Serena came home ranting about a contest event that required a fancy video submission. The submission fee was high, and she needed a new recorder to distinguish herself. Without a word to me, mother and father plundered my container. They took every dollar I'd preserved to buy Serena a stylish video camera complete with a stand. "It's for your sibling's future," father said, not even glancing at me. Serena glowed, already recording herself, spinning in the living area, while I stood there, my torso constricted, my aspirations devastated. I didn't weep. I didn't yell. I went back to my chamber, closed the door, and opened another volume. That instant ignited a flame in me. I wasn't going to plead for their endorsement or rival for their notice. I'd demonstrate myself in my own manner, on my own conditions. Every time they commended Serena's latest show or handed Marcus another plaything, I immersed myself deeper in my lessons. Arithmetic became my getaway digits, my defiance. I excelled every exam, stayed late at the archive, and taught myself things my instructors couldn't. My chamber was my stronghold where I constructed my schemes to rise above their anticipations. Serena kept pursuing the limelight. She'd pull mother and father to every contest event, every school, drama absorbing their cheers. Marcus's still small would follow along, his pockets filled with sweets they'd purchased to keep him content. I'd observe from the margins, my nose in a volume overlooked. Once said a household cookout. A neighbor asked what I wanted to be when I grew up. Before I could reply, mother chuckled and said, "Oh, she's just into her dull digits." Serena chuckled, flipping her hair while father altered the topic to her latest tryout. I bit my lip and strolled away, swearing to show them one day. My chamber held my secrets, notebooks packed with venture ideas, archive volumes on finances, and a quiet resolve that grew stronger every time they ignored me. I wasn't showy like Serena or indulged like Marcus, but I had something they didn't: concentration. I knew I'd find a way out of their shade, not by departing the home, but by constructing something they couldn't disregard, and I'd do it right here in Springfield, in the chamber they thought meant nothing. After secondary school, I started constructing my aspiration right here in Springfield. While Serena pursued the limelight, I turned to something they'd never comprehend: figures. I'd always adored how they fit together, how they narrated tales no one else could perceive. So I plunged in, resolved to forge my own route without departing the home I'd grown up in. I spent late evenings in my chamber poring over archive volumes on finances and free digital classes I found on venture tactics. My table became a war zone covered in notes on shares, budgeting, and asset control. I wasn't just learning, I was fixated. When my mother walked by and saw me jotting equations, she'd roll her eyes. "Still toying with your digit," she'd say, her tone oozing with pity. My father was worse, grumbling about how I'd never succeed with my head buried in volumes. They thought Serena's tryouts and Marcus's appeal were the future. I was just squandering time. But I wasn't. I applied for every grant I could find, staying up until dawn to perfect my Gekkeist compositions. My diligence paid off when I secured a full scholarship to a local university in Springfield. I studied finances, excelling every class while laboring weekends at a small fiscal firm downtown. The position wasn't glamorous, sorting documents, processing figures for customers, but it taught me how real individuals managed their funds. I listened to their aspirations, their fears, and I learned how to turn digits into answers. By my second year, I was giving informal guidance to colleagues, helping them budget or invest small amounts. They'd thank me, astonished at the outcomes, while my household had no clue. After university, I didn't halt. I saw a void in Springfield. Individuals needed personal fiscal guidance, not just corporate lending, so I started my own advising enterprise right from my youth bedroom. I constructed a web page on a used laptop using every method I'd learned to make it look expert. My first customers were neighbors, small enterprise owners, and pensioners who wanted to extend their savings. I'd meet them at cafes, simplifying complex venture schemes into steps they could follow. Word spread, and soon I had a steady flow of customers, from instructors to shopkeepers, all trusting me to grow their funds. Within 3 years, my enterprise was pulling in millions in income. I'd crafted a brand that stood for trust and outcomes, helping hundreds of customers build assets. But you'd never know it looking at me. I wore the same plain garments, drove a second-hand vehicle, and kept residing in my guardian's home in that same chamber with my old table and shelves of volumes. I didn't need to display my success. I knew what I'd constructed. My bank balance grew, but I saved every dollar, planning for something larger, something my household couldn't imagine. They never inquired about my work. To them, I was still the quiet kid who'd never amount to much. At supper, Serena would chatter about her latest broadcasting gig, her followers climbing into the thousands. My father would nod proudly while my mother enthused over Marcus's secondary school pranks, calling him our little celebrity. If I mentioned my position, they'd change the subject or give me that look, like I was a humiliation. "You still doing that digit stuff?" father once asked, barely hiding his grin. I'd just nod, keeping my triumphs to myself. There were moments I doubted myself. One evening after Serena boasted about a sponsor agreement and my mother applauded like she'd won an award, I felt tiny. I sat in my chamber staring at my customer files, wondering if I'd ever be noticed. That's when Lydia Bennett, my friend from university, stepped in. We'd met in an economics lesson bonding over our love for digits. She came over, saw the burden on my shoulders and said, "You're doing something genuine, Eliza. They don't get it. But you're altering lives." Her words pulled me back, reminding me why I'd started. It was the only time I needed that kind of support, and Lydia was there, no questions asked. I kept going, signing bigger customers, local physicians, small tech ventures while staying under the radar. My guardians thought I was barely managing, maybe working some dead-end office position. They didn't know I'd paid off my student debts, saved a fortune, and was already planning my next move. My chamber with its squeaky floorboards and faded wallpaper was my command center, my proof that I didn't need their endorsement to succeed. I was ready for whatever came next, even if they weren't. Last Saturday, I sat down at the household supper table, unaware everything was about to alter. The atmosphere was thick with the usual conversation, plates clattering as we passed around mashed potatoes and grilled chicken. My mother, always the director of these gatherings, had that look in her eyes, the one that meant she was about to drop a surprise. My father sat at the head of the table, his stance stiff, ready to support her. Serena was scrolling on her phone, probably checking her latest follower count. Marcus poked at his food, his usual carefree smile absent. I took a deep breath, hoping for once we could just eat without drama. I was wrong. Halfway through the meal, Mother set down her utensil and smiled, the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Sweetheart," she said, looking straight at me, "we've been talking and your sibling needs your chamber for her live stream studio. It's time to release it." My gut sank. My chamber wasn't just a space. It was my haven where I'd spent years, dreaming, studying, building my enterprise. The walls held my childhood drawings. My shelves bent with volumes that formed me, and my table was where I'd launched $1 million company. Giving it up for Serena's live streams felt like erasing everything I was. I opened my mouth to object, but before I could get a word out, Father's fist hit the table, rattling the glasses. "This isn't up for discussion," he thundered. "Agree to surrender the chamber or you're out of this household. No place for you here." His voice echoed sharp and final like a magistrate's hammer. The room froze. Marcus's utensil stopped midair, his eyes darting between us. Serena leaned back, a smug grin spreading across her face like she'd just won a reward. "Come on," she said, her tone dripping with mockery. "Your dull finance position doesn't need a whole chamber. What you need space to shuffle documents. It's not like you're making real funds." Her words hurt, but they weren't new. Serena had always acted like my work was a joke. Something small compared to her flashy broadcasting career. She'd boast about her sponsor deals, her thousands of followers, while Mother and Father nodded like she was a superstar. My position, helping people build assets, turning their aspirations into reality, was invisible to them. They didn't know I'd built an enterprise worth millions, and I'd never told them. I didn't need their applause, but losing my chamber, my anchor for Serena's ego, was a line I couldn't tolerate. I looked around the table, their faces a mix of anticipation and apathy. Mother's smile was tight, waiting for me to comply. Father's glare dared me to defy him. Serena's smirk was practically a challenge, her phone now face down as she savored the moment. Marcus, though, was different. He shifted in his seat, his jaw clenched like he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. He wasn't joining in, but he wasn't defending me either, just stuck caught in the tension. I could have laid out every sacrifice I'd made, every dollar I'd earned, every client I'd helped. I could have told them my dull position had outdone Serena's fleeting fame 100 times over. But I didn't. Instead, I leaned back in my chair, took a slow sip of water, and smiled, a calm, deliberate smile that made Mother's brow furrow and Father's eyes narrow. Serena's smirk faltered just for a second, like she sensed something was off. Marcus glanced at me, his expression unreadable. They expected me to crumble, to beg, to give in like I always had. But I wasn't that kid anymore. The silence stretched heavy and uncomfortable. Mother cleared, her throat trying to regain control. "It's for the household," she said, her voice softer now, like she was coaxing a child. "Your sibling's career is taking off. She needs the space to shine." Father grunted in agreement, his arms crossed. Serena tossed her hair, adding, "It's not like you're doing anything important in there." I kept smiling, letting their words bounce off me. My chamber was more than a space. It was where I'd rebuilt myself, where I'd proven them wrong. Without saying a word, they thought they could take it, but they had no idea what I was capable of. I pushed my plate away, my smile unwavering. "Let's finish supper," I said, my voice steady. Mother blinked, caught off guard. Father's scowl deepened, like he was itching for a fight I wouldn't give him. Serena rolled her eyes, picking up her phone again, dismissing me. Marcus just stared at his plate, his fingers tapping nervously. They didn't know it, but I'd already made my choice. I wasn't going to argue or plead. I had a plan, one that would turn their world upside down, and I was ready to set it in motion. It started the day after that disastrous supper. I'd spent years saving, my bank account swollen from my advising enterprise, but I'd kept it quiet, living simply in my guardian's house. Their demand to surrender my chamber, my sanctuary, lit a spark. I wasn't going to just depart. I was going to make a declaration. I called Vivian Reed, the property agent I'd been working with for months, scouting properties in secret. "Vivian," I said, "I want that house across the street. Let's close it now." She didn't hesitate. "It's yours," she replied, her voice crackling with excitement over the phone. By Friday, the paperwork was done, the payment transferred, and I held the title to a house that screamed everything my household never believed I could achieve. I invited them over that Sunday, not to my new place, but to our usual household coffee at their house. They thought it was just another chance to pressure me about the chamber. My mother greeted me with that same fake smile, saying, "Have you thought about what we discussed?" My father grunted, already impatient. Serena lounged on the couch, scrolling her phone, while Marcus sat quietly, his eyes flicking to me like he sensed something was coming. I took a sip of coffee, set the mug down, and said, "I've made my decision. I'm moving out into the house across the street." Their jaws dropped. Mother's smile vanished, replaced by a confused blink. Father's coffee mug froze halfway to his mouth. Serena's phone slipped from her hand, hitting the floor with a thud. Marcus leaned forward, his brow furrowed like he was trying to process it. "What do you mean, across the street?" Father finally barked, his voice sharp with disbelief. I pulled out the title, sliding it across the table. "I bought it, paid in full, cash." Before they could recover, I kept going. "Oh, and that dull finance position you all mocked. It's not a position, it's my company. I've been running a personal finance advising enterprise for years. It's worth millions." The room went silent, the kind of silence that feels like it's holding its breath. Mother's eyes widened, darting to the title like it was a trick. Father's face turned red, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. Serena, for once, was speechless, her usual smirk gone. Marcus just stared, his expression shifting from shock to something softer, like realization. Vivian called right then, as if on cue. I put her on speaker. "Congratulations, Eliza," she said, her voice bright. "The house is officially yours." That was one of the fastest cash deals I've ever seen. I thanked her, hung up, and let the words sink in. My household's disbelief was palpable. Mother was the first to break. "How did you afford this?" she stammered, her voice a mix of awe and suspicion. Father jumped in, leaning forward. "Where's this money coming from? You've been living here, barely scraping by." Serena, recovering her edge, scuffed. "Millions." "Yeah, right. You're making this up." But her voice trembled, betraying her doubt. I didn't flinch. "Believe what you want," I said, my tone calm but firm. "I built an enterprise, helping people manage their assets. I've got customers across Springfield, physicians, enterprise owners, pensioners." I didn't need to flaunt it. I stood up, picking up the title. "I'm moving out, but I'm not going far. You'll see me every day right across the street." That's when they started scrambling. Mother's tone shifted, suddenly sweet. "Honey, we didn't mean to push you out. Let's talk about this. Maybe we can work something Out. Father nodded, his gruffness gone. Yeah, you don't need to leave. We're household. Serena, ever the opportunist, chimed in. So, how much are you making? Maybe I could use some of that for my channel. Her eyes gleamed, already calculating. Marcus stayed quiet, but I caught him looking at me differently, like he was seeing me for the first time. There was a flicker of guilt in his eyes, like he was starting to question the way they'd always treated me. I shook my head, stepping back. This isn't about you, I told them. I'm done being invisible. I'm moving into my house, and I'm not here to bankroll anyone. Mother's face fell. Father's jaw tightened, and Serena's eyes narrowed like she was already plotting. Marcus, though, gave a small nod like he understood. I walked out, leaving them in their stunned silence, and crossed the street to my new home. Boxes were already packed, my volumes, my table, my life ready to leave their house behind. A few weeks later, I looked across at my guardian's house, watching it all fall apart. From my front porch, I could see the cracks forming not in the walls but in their world. I'd settled into my new home, the one I'd bought outright, and every morning I stepped outside, waved and went about my day. That simple gesture, a casual flick of my hand, seemed to haunt them, a quiet reminder of the years they'd dismissed me. It started with Serena. Her broadcasting career, once her golden ticket, collapsed under the weight of her own choices. She'd gotten hooked on online betting, lured by flashy wagering apps promising quick wins. At first, she hit it, posting her usual glamorous videos to keep up appearances. But the debts piled up, hundreds of thousands of dollars, more than her sponsorships could cover. Then came the scandal. A rival broadcaster exposed her betting habit, leaking screenshots of her wagers and debts. The internet turned on her overnight. Her followers dropped, sponsors pulled out, and her carefully curated image shattered. She'd sit on my guardian's porch, staring at her phone, her face pale like she was watching her dreams vanish in real time. My guardians, desperate to save their star, stepped in. My father, always quick to fix Serena's messes, and my mother, unable to let go of her pride in her, made a drastic move. They put their house, the one I'd grown up in, on the market. It sold fast, but not for enough. They scraped together every penny to pay off Serena's creditors, leaving them with just enough to rent a cramped apartment on the outskirts of Springfield. I'd drive by sometimes, seeing their old home empty, a sold sign staked in the yard. They'd traded their stability for Serena's mistakes, and now they were starting over in a place that barely fit their furniture. Marcus was different. He'd always been the baby, spoiled with toys and attention, but something shifted after I revealed my success. One evening, he showed up at my doorstep, his usual cocky grin gone. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice low, almost breaking. "I never realized how unfair we were to you." He admitted he'd been blind to the way mother and father favored Serena, how they'd ignored my achievements. It hit him hard, seeing their house sold, Serena's career in ruins, and me standing tall across the street. He said he was done with the reckless spending, the designer clothes, the parties. "I'm enrolling in community college," he told me, his eyes steady. "I want to study engineering, make something of myself." I nodded, not forgiving him outright, but respecting the change. He walked away, shoulders squared, like he was finally ready to grow up. Every morning, I'd step onto my porch, coffee in hand, and wave at my guardian's old house. Even after they moved, I kept the habit, a quiet jab at the years they'd pushed me aside. Sometimes I'd see Serena visiting their new apartment, her head down, no longer the radiant influencer she'd been. Mother and father would call, leaving voicemails about catching up or family unity. But I kept my distance. Their sudden interest felt hollow, tied to my bank account rather than any real regret. I wasn't cruel. I answered their calls, kept things civil, but I wasn't their ATM. They'd made their choices, and now they were living with them. Meanwhile, I was settling into my new life. Lydia came over to help me throw a housewarming party. She wasn't there to prop me up emotionally this time, just to help with logistics, picking out decorations and organizing the guest list. We invited my customers, neighbors, and a few old classmates, filling my new home with laughter and music. Lydia buzzed around, setting up tables and joking about my fancy taste in wine. "You're really living the dream now," she said, grinning as she arranged a tray of appetizers. The Mikhoherim party was a celebration not just of the house but of everything I'd built on my own terms. As the weeks passed, I watched my household unravel from afar. Serena took a job at a local mall, her broadcasting days over, her confidence replaced by a quiet resignation. Mother and father adjusted to their new life, their voices tinged with bitterness when they mentioned me. They'd stop by sometimes, standing awkwardly on my porch, asking vague questions about my enterprise. "You're doing so well," Mother would say, her smile forced. Father would nod, adding, "We're proud of you," but the words felt like an afterthought. I'd thank them, keep the conversation short, and send them on their way. They didn't get to rewrite the past just because I'd succeeded. Marcus was the only one who seemed to change for real. He'd text me updates about his classes, small victories like passing a math exam or landing a part-time job. "I'm trying to be better," he wrote once, and I believed him. He wasn't perfect, but he was trying, and that was more than I could say for the others. I'd reply with encouragement, keeping the door open, but not wide enough for them to walk back into my life without earning it. From my porch, I'd look at their old house now occupied by a new household and feel a strange mix of peace and resolve. I'd proven myself not just to them, but to me. Their downfall wasn't my fault, but it was a consequence of their choices, and I wasn't done building my future. I've built a life in Springfield that's mine, free from the shadows of my household's expectations. I made a choice to help Marcus, wiring money for his college tuition after he showed real effort to change. He texts me updates, grateful, and I'm glad to see him grow, but I've drawn a firm line with Serena, my father, and my mother. Their calls go unanswered now, their attempts to reconnect ignored. I'm not here to fix their mistakes or fuel their regrets. They chose to overlook me for years, and I've chosen to move forward without them. Last cohort weekend, I invited Lydia and a group of friends to my new home for a celebration. The living room buzzed with chatter, the kitchen filled with the smell of homemade food and laughter. Lydia, always the life of the party, raised a glass and toasted to my journey. To Eliza, who built this from nothing, she cheered, and my friends clapped their support, a stark contrast to the household I'd left behind. We danced, shared stories, and planned for the future, my house no longer just a building but a symbol of my independence. Looking back, I've learned that self-reliance is my greatest strength. My household's favoritism towards Serena led to their financial ruin and social fallout, a harsh lesson in the cost of bias. I realized my worth doesn't depend on their approval. It comes from the work I've done, the lives I've changed, and the home I've built. You don't need a household's validation to shine. You need your own resolve. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever felt overlooked or underestimated, I hope this inspires you to keep pushing forward. Share your own experiences in the comments. I'd love to hear how you've overcome being ignored. Your story matters just like mine. Subscribe, and let's keep this conversation going.